let's do this. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Finding Community During and After University, a conversation with former LGBTQ2S plus campus leaders. My name is Kiana Justine Lequier, and I am the co-vice president of marketing and communications, as well as a co-founder of the Queens Queer Alumni Chapter. Today, we will be having a candid conversation with Daisy Fraser-Boychuk, hello, former co-chair of the Education on Queer Issues Project, or also known as EQUIP, on finding community and safe spaces for LGBTQ2S plus folks during their time at Queens and after graduation in celebration of Pride Month. Before we formally introduce ourselves, or I introduce Daisy, pardon me, I would like to take this moment to acknowledge the traditional lands that we stand on. Daisy is situated in Toronto, which are the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat. I am currently situated in Montreal, which are the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, Huron-Wendat, Abenaki, and the Anishinaabe. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands, and I would encourage all of you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional lands that you stand on. So, as mentioned a bit earlier, this is Daisy Fraser-Boychuk. Thank you so much for joining us today. Daisy's pronouns are they, them, and they are a 2020 Queens graduate in gender studies. While at Queens, they had the pleasure of working with the Education on Queer Issues Project, EQUIP, for 2 years, then leading as a co-chair of the group in their 4th year. As well as they recently completed their master's at the Women and Gender Study Institute, WGSI, at the University of Toronto. I actually didn't know that. Congrats.
Thanks.
Currently, they are working as a resident counselor at Canada's National Ballet School, seeking to employ any and all they've learned throughout their education, formal or informal, in the classroom and out of the classroom, to improve the lives of the students they work with. So, fabulous having you here today. I am so excited. Briefly before we started the interview, I was just telling you about like how I've been wanting to have some sort of like a conversation with you because we overlapped during our time at Queens and I saw you were killing it. You were doing everything and anything for the community. So thank you for that, first of all.
Thank you for having me. I'm really glad that we got to eventually intersect, I guess, post our time at Queens, kind of like towards the end.
Yes.
But then now more, and it's so great that you're part of this group, the alumni group. You guys are doing some really great work, even though you just started.
Yeah. And you know, a personal confession too. You were one of the people who, during my time at Queens, I was still in the closet, and you were one of those people who, seeing you so unapologetically free in yourself, gave me the courage to also come out later on. And for those of you who don't know, okay, I'm coming out. But I really appreciate it, and all the work that you folks did. It really just, secretly, it gave me a lot of strength to just embrace who I am. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
That's so lovely. I'm so glad that you have gotten to this point of being able to come out. It's really hard, especially at Queens, and especially having all the intersections that you have. I'm sure that there's a lot of nuance to your experience, especially at an institution.
For sure.
Like Queens, it's not easy.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that's why I think this conversation is near and dear to me, because I know I'm not the only person who was struggling to find community at their time at Queens, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's struggling to find community outside of Queens. So I'm really excited. So are you ready? You want to get into it?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's do this. So tell me about your experience when you first arrived at Queens. What was the LGBTQ plus community like at the time? Did you have difficulty finding community?
That's a good question. So when I came to Queens in 2016, I did not know that I was trans non-binary. I knew that I was queer. And I mean, Queens was a new place to me. I didn't really know who I was, where I was trying to go within my university career. But I came to Queens with some friends from high school who were also queer and had been queer for, like, they had come out previously in high school, which was really fortunate because we went to an arts high school. So we kind of had that foundation to feel more comfortable, etc. So I remember coming in, it being definitely a shock with all the partying going on. I didn't really know where I fit in, but just kind of naturally, like, you end up going to certain frosh events or whatnot, and you end up finding lots of awesome new people. But then you do meet the few other queer people, specifically like other queer women and lesbians, etc. And then they know the other lesbian and their residents,
Right.
something like that. And then we all just start hanging out. And then they're like, oh, well, we're going to hang out on Tyndall Field or whatever at like 9 p.m. This night. So then you end up meeting everybody. So that was cool. But that didn't really lead to too many close friendships, just because you grow so much even in your first year. But that's kind of what it was like. I remember trying to also insert myself. I had like long hair. I looked more femme. And I remember trying to insert myself into the party culture, which I did for a month and a half. So it was the middle of October, which was is homecoming in October? Is that what we were doing?
I think it is. Yes. October feels foggy, so I feel like it was probably homecoming around that time.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. It was all a blur, like the first term of first year. But I remember like participating in and going to house parties, big parties, and whatever, and trying to participate in hookup culture with like boys at the school that I was meeting at parties. And I just remember, like, I am queer. I like people of all genders. But I remember, like, it was okay. But then it's kind of funny, right after one of the parties that I was at, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm forcing myself to be a part of a culture that is supposed to be fun and is supposed to be exploratory. But I didn't know why I didn't fit in. And then I got into gender studies and I started learning about a whole slew of things. My mind was blown, of course, but trans studies. And then I was like, oh, like, I'm allowed to do whatever and be whoever I want to be. And then that's where it all changed.
That's amazing. I think you brought up a really great point about like how sometimes the party scene or even just like the culture at Queens can be a little monotonous at times. So I know what you mean by just trying to get in where you fit in and just kind of going for it. But I think it's really amazing that it only took you a month to be like, yeah, this is not it for me. Like, I feel like for like a lot of other folks, myself included, I think I tried putting up a good fight for like longer than I probably should have. So I think that's really amazing. That shows how in tune you are with yourself, which is something that's really admirable, especially for, like folks like me who's still kind of trying to figure out gender and like sexuality and all that kind of stuff. It's really amazing to hear. And so with that too, just, it sounds like it was a little bit of a struggle at the beginning. I think it all is for honestly all of us. So where did you end up finding community and safe spaces for our community? Like, what clubs or organizations did you join? And maybe like what buildings provided these spaces? Like, was there like a specific like meetup or?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. Good segue. In first year, I did not really find any of the spaces. I did look up like queer groups at Queens in first year, and Equip did pop up, but I didn't understand the process of how to become a part of that group. Besides like actually being a part of it, not just attending events. So definitely through Equip. But so I was in that group in second year and third year, as you mentioned. But it was kind of rocky, just because sometimes like Equip not inherently has like, it's not inherently like cliquey or anything like that, because nothing is inherently, it doesn't have to be anything. But of course, some, us in the queer community can be very selective, intentionally or unintentionally. So that was definitely kind of the vibe. So I didn't really know how I could, make my mark or where I was supposed to be, even within those groups. So I really found my place in third year and then in fourth year with Equip, but then also through gender studies, I met so many awesome people, so many awesome friends who were so smart, and like the professors as well. They just have so much knowledge. So like the JDUC, if we're talking about spaces, like the JDUC for sure, because that's where the Equip office is and where so many of the like the AMS offices are there. So then we have like equity and whatnot. We have Levana next door, the Levana Gender Advocacy Center office. But what was that? And then other groups were in that office. Do you remember? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I don't, unfortunately.
That's okay. There was like a bunch of like queer and POC radical activist groups.
Oh, wait. I do know what
right next to you.
I do know what you're talking about, on the second floor, right? Close to the Queen's Pub, I think it is.
It's on the third floor. So
there's third, my bad.
On the third floor by the food bank, and then right next door. It's just been a few years, so I can't remember.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Everything. But anyway, so that space, and then Macintosh Corey Hall, Matt Corey, of course, because that's where the gender studies and the political studies departments and many more were housed there. And yeah.
That's awesome. And, I think a great point that you brought up earlier at the beginning of this answer was how you struggled finding yourself and finding your community the first 2 years at Queens. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up, because I think a lot of times we think we're just going to meet our people immediately. And I think we need to be kinder to ourselves, more patient with ourselves, especially in the conversation of finding your identity. We need to be patient with ourselves and give ourselves the courtesy and the time to actually find those spaces. So I think that's actually really great, because I initially thought that you probably just like found your community off the bat, but that's not the case.
Yeah. And like, I didn't even predict that I would meet so many friends and so many integral people to my education, but also my education about myself. Like, I thought that I was going to meet all those people through something like Equip, where it says queer in the title. But I met, like, I would say the greater portion of those people that shaped who I am and who I became at Queens were in like tens of other activist groups across the board that were dealing with anti-Blackness, that were dealing with anti-Indigeneity at Queens, that were dealing with ableism, just all of that, because we became a network. Started working together, and then I was like, this is what like it's about. And people don't see that at Queens until they like put in the effort, unfortunately.
I know what you mean, because I think like that's how I believe I met you, was through QBAS and Equip had an event. I forgot what it was called and all that. But it's like you're so spot on though, because like when you join a lot of these organizations, you actually have the opportunity to meet other people, maybe even find yourself as well too. Because when I saw Equip, I didn't hear about Equip until probably my third or fourth year. So I was like, oh, okay, like I didn't realize there was actually like a space for us out here, and it was really awesome to be able to co-collaborate. So we'll move on to the next question, though. That was amazing answer, by the way. I wanted to know, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding the Queens community has regarding the LGBTQ2+ community, and how did that affect your time at Queens?
I would say, I mean, not just with Queens, because Queens is a microcosm of the society at large. Universities are, institutions are. But I would say that misunderstanding that queer people and trans people are just like most, if not all other marginalized communities, are here to educate you. Like, of course we have Equip, the Education on Queer Issues project. Like, we are trying to educate. I don't know who decided that name. It's a good name, but like, that's, even though we are educating and advocating, like, of course it kind of turns into this like we end up giving too much, or the cis collective assumes that that's what we're here for them. And of course, like, that's not just the queer community, like it is all communities, or many. I won't speak for everybody. You see that as a pattern. So that, but then also, like Pride is this weekend. We're filming it on the Friday before Pride. And of course, people do like to party. Queers like to have fun. Everybody likes to have fun. But again, like the purpose of being queer is not to party. Yeah. Like the purpose of being queer is so many things. It's whatever we want. There doesn't also have to be a purpose, but I mean, like, we're not, things that we do as a community end up being taken for granted by the cishet community. So then, like, like drag shows, amazing. I do drag, of course. Like, everybody loves drag, but then once things start to become popular or start to become well known, they start to be taken advantage of. So does that make sense as like a misunderstanding of like who we're supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, what I got from that answer is just, I think a lot of times people misunderstood our existence at Queens. It's not to be your teacher. It's not to provide entertainment for you. It's just simply to just get our education and live our lives. So I don't understand like why. I know exactly what you're saying. I think that's actually a great answer.
Yeah, and like those were the avenues that were available to us at Queens. You were either a part of like the Equity Commission, or you were a part of another group. Like there was Get Real, which is another queer group. And then, or you were having a drag show. And it was kind of like, where else can you be where like people will hear you and see you? Yeah. And there aren't many other places. Yeah.
And so it's important to like understand that like it's not just a drag show. It's like this is actually like really a safe space for people who are maybe in the closet, people who are maybe not quite sure about what's going on, all that, people who are open, but it's also just not super safe spaces going out to a lot of cis or straight clubs or wherever it may be. I totally get that. That's a really great point.
Yeah.
So next question though. This is actually the main one that I was really excited to ask you. But knowing that you were a super fierce advocate and leader for your community at Queens, what was your proudest accomplishment regarding the advancement of our community?
Definitely queer prom.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes. Yeah. Were you there?
No, I never got to go. Cries, but whatever.
That's well, maybe one day. Maybe one day there'll be another iteration with lots of people there.
I was a shy little closeted person, so I was just like, oh, like I don't know if I should go. Now I regret it. Now I really want to go to a queer prom, but whatever.
Yeah, that's so surprising that like, because you like do so much work in like this, that like I'm surprised that you, not surprised, but like it would have been really cool like to have you out and like a part of like more explicitly a part of like the queer community whatnots that were happening.
I appreciate that. So for all the people who are in the closet right now, just know, we got like little communities, little clusters, like reach out to folks like Daisy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like because I regret not participating in those, but sorry, go back to your answer.
No, it's okay. I'm sorry that you weren't participating in them because it would have been so much more fun.
Thank you.
So yeah, queer prom, definitely. It was an idea that was being played with when I was in third year at in Equip, but it never came to fruition. And then I was like, this is a really good idea, and it can happen. Yeah, as long as we have money and the will. So we started working on that in the summer. Jane, the other co-chair of Equip at that point. And then friends from Get Real Queens, that other queer activist chapter that's a larger organization. Anyway, and I was like, what if we, had a capacity of 200 people? Like, could we do that? And we did that. And it was the first time that I ever did drag in a space. And I was like,
I didn't know that.
Drag. Yeah, that was where Toledo was born.
Wow.
In the JDAC. But it was great. Like, I remember even talking to the bar staff that were a part of Queens Queens facilities, or like Queens hospitality or something like that. Hospitality is probably it. Like I spoke to them afterwards because I was like helping them set up and just telling them where to be. And they were like, this was really fun for us. Like normally it's just a bunch of like stuck up Queens people drinking wine. And it was great too because like being able to collaborate with like friends that were associated with Equip, but then also a part of leading. Like Alyssa was leading and is she still leading? I don't know. Queens Queer Collage Collective. I believe that is the name. I may be adding an extra word to it. Yeah, that was that radical like collage group that, you know, like a radical collage. How does that work? But such beautiful artwork that was made. You know, they put up like all their collages and people's collages. They had an event right before Queer Prom. So then there was like, it was just like plastered all over the walls, like attendees who had made this like beautiful art. So then you could like go and look at like who had made what, and then they were in the space and like reclaiming that space.
That's amazing.
And yeah, there were just so many great things that became possible from doing Queer Prom and from collaborating with so many different folks. It's just beautiful. Everyone had fun.
Can we still see those? Like, do we have access to that if we ever go back to Queens?
Like the collages?
Yeah.
I think that people took them home, like if there were names, but they, like if you look at, I don't know if Alyssa wants a plug, but like Alyssa still makes collages. Of course, with that collective, and they're always being produced. Like I have some in my apartment hanging on the wall, so they exist. Lovely. Yeah,
I really love that. So the next question, not to put a damper on things, but it's kind of like a little bit the opposite, but we have to have like these real conversations, or else advancement just can't happen. So we need to call it out. But what was the hardest obstacle that you had to overcome as a leader at Queens? Like what barriers were in your way? What were you able to overcome? Maybe some that you weren't able to overcome, to, you know, give some advice to the new leaders, the next generation?
Mm-hmm. Well, my answer is twofold. First is that at Queens, and like within any institution that it exists from wealthy people's money, and it's how it like markets itself. The institution, as we know, will always want to limit the type of equity work that's being done. Or the type of activist and anti-oppression work that's being done. So like to have something like Equip that has funding from the university, there are going to be limits set, unfortunately, by the people who are giving you that money. So, and that's like in any organization, you know, like if you have a donor, the donor ends up having, that's just how politics unfortunately works, of course, as we know. So that was a huge obstacle. So we would be like, we would want to, you know, protest something on campus, or we would want to advocate for another group of folks at Queens, like having a pro-Palestine conversation, pro-Palestine event. The higher ups would push against that because they didn't want to create a stir where it would just complicate, you know, their standing. So that's one. The other one is not necessarily my obstacle. It's an obstacle that I have seen and I've, you know, worked against, but confronting, of course, how so many aspects and people of the queer community, of the LGBTQ community, doesn't just like not make room for race and class and ability to be centered in the conversation, but they'll like folks will actively like question you to your face. So like at Queens, I'm sure, you know, I'm preaching to the choir, but like at Queens, people would come to events and like talk to you, especially as leaders, and say, I feel, as a queer person, I feel ostracized by this event because it doesn't center me, or it's centering other things, and they don't really know what they're saying, but like white queers will so easily become triggered. Maybe triggered isn't the right word, but just like become activated by.
I love that. I'm gonna say that.
Will become activated, and like, you know, like I have also experienced that activation, because we're taught to have precedence over all those spaces. But like that is such an obstacle, because then there becomes a division of the queer community, of people who want to constantly emphasize that queer activism is all other activisms, is anti-racist activism, is decolonial activism, etc. But then you have the folks who are not explicitly not supporting those, but are maintaining queer activism as separate. Again, not necessarily like they're thinking this has to be separate, but the type of work that ends up being done ends up being separate.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that's my answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, I get that, because I think that also kind of contributes in my own story, like why it took me a while to come out, because I also didn't see a lot of Black queer people at Queens. So I was just kind of, I didn't want to be like the only one, honestly. I was a little nervous about that. And I just wasn't sure if there was community and support specifically for me, because I would see, you know, white queer people just, you know, doing their thing and all that. But it's just, sometimes the conversation, I feel like maybe doesn't include me, or there's things that I don't get, or things I don't relate with. So it's difficult trying to find that. So I think that's actually a really good critique, and not to like insult people or whatever, but it's just to be mindful about creating more intersectional spaces for all queer folks, you know, so then we do feel like there is community for us, that there's spaces for us to speak and feel comfortable at. I think that's actually a really great point. I wanted to actually follow up with you on your first point, which you were talking about having limited freedom with certain funding and stuff. How can alumni help with that? Like, how can we then assist these organizations so that you guys won't have so many obstacles or barriers, and then you can complete whatever initiatives, protests, events that you folks want to achieve?
I think that my answer is something that, you know, most people would think of, is like money, like funding, like paying, whether it be a performer, a speaker, just always paying people, because as especially alumni just means you're now a true adult and you must make your own money. You know, like it's so easy to struggle within your own workplace, being a queer trans person, being a queer Black woman, etc., to make your living, to survive, but then to also feel like you like belong somewhere. So all like just funding wherever, not even just like your group funding, just anybody. If you have money, put it somewhere. It'll go miles.
Send us the coins. We need
exactly.
Same.
And platform. Like, I mean, money becomes platform, but saying like this group exists, these people exist, they're doing really great work. It just helps people network, and that's the best support. That's
amazing advice.
Yeah,
it really is. So please, people, please send the monies to the organizations that deserve.
Literally.
So we are coming close to time. So I did want to focus on two last questions that focus more on alumni and after graduation. So now that you've graduated from Queens, congrats by the ways, and on the masters, how have you been able to find community and safe spaces beyond your respected clubs and organizations? And what advice can you give to new LGBTQ2S plus, alumni seeking these connections and environments? I'm definitely in those shoes as well too. So any advice? Would love it.
Honestly, same. Any advice if you have to collaborate on feeling good in the world. For me, I've always, like, coming out of Queens, I started working in a restaurant. No, sorry. Coming out of U of T, I started working in a restaurant just to kind of get my footing before I started working somewhere else. And it was just like a huge shock to start working with specifically so many cishet men. And you're just like, I don't know how to explain to you that I use they them pronouns. Like, I don't know where to start. Like, because they unfortunately they need that. So anyway, for me, it's working somewhere, because of course, again, we have to be working and making money. Working somewhere that I know a majority of people in that space will either be queer, or, like, be similar to you, or have the background knowledge so that you don't have to start from scratch where you are.
That.
And like, that's just how it is, unfortunately. People get into lines of work that, like the arts or education, or advocacy, whatever. That's truly the way. You just have to surround yourself somehow, with people who understand you. And sometimes it's fighting. Like, sometimes you're in a line of work that you just can't, but you need to find that community. And advice is that, I mean, this is kind of contradictory to what I just said in a way, but like, you will find community in places that you didn't expect it. Like at Queens, like, I didn't know what I was looking for, but I didn't know that I would find community. I mean, it's self-explanatory now in gender studies, but like, I didn't know that. And like, I didn't know that I would find like people who are working in other clubs like you, that would become my community. You just don't really know what's out there until you start looking.
Yeah.
Or you just like push your way through.
Yeah. So be open, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Yeah. Be open, guess. I feel like it's a lot of guessing too. It's like, okay, I feel like I'll find my people out here. Let me just keep my fingers crossed and just go. Yeah. I literally feel that. That's where I'm at right now. So that's very good advice.
Yeah.
And the last question, knowing that many marginalized alumni had a very difficult experience during their time at Queens due to racism, homophobia, transphobia, etc., how do you think the alumni community can improve its relationship with our community and get more of us involved and actually want to be involved and feel like we're included in the community?
I think, besides the point on, like, if you are given funding, I don't know where the Queens Queer Alumni Chapter gets funding, but one, I said paying people to, like, if you have a speaker, of course, supporting them that way, giving folks a platform. But I think, like, similar to what happened with my experience with Equip, like, Equip was already like a marginalized group. It's queer, but we were able to support other queer people by collaborating with them and building like trust and like saying that we were committed, or we were trying to demonstrate commitment to others. And yeah, just giving people like a place to be themselves and to bring their work and to bring their advocacy. And always trying to, like, having a voice means so many things, but like working, like, listing 10 ways that you can help someone else have a voice, and then trying to accomplish at least just a few of them. Because then people will get to know you as like that group that collaborated with that other group. And then you just create a circle, like you create a network inherently just by doing that.
Yeah. And I might actually even jump on that too and say, I think something else that can be done is giving members of our community more opportunities to speak our truth, both the ugly and the beautiful. You know what I mean? I think that's just life, and that's just really our experience. Like, nothing's perfect, nothing is completely terrible, but we need to have opportunities to really just tell it how it was and how things really went down and stuff.
Yeah, it's really important to have, if you're having events, to have some events where you're like having a rally, or you're having like an open stage or something like that, where people can just speak.
Agreed. All right, well, that was it. Thank you so much for a cute little conversation. I hope some people learned some stuff. I certainly did. So I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today. Before we end, if you folks don't know, we kind of alluded to it a couple times in the conversation, but Daisy is a drag king, Toledo Tendergroin. Literally amazing. I stand, even though I've never seen Toledo in person, but we're working on that.
One day.
So with that being said, I thought it would be a really cute outro game if we did like, which song do you prefer for like a drag performance, like this or that, basically, which is the queen. So first one is About Damn Time by Lizzo or Levitating by Dua Lipa. Dula Peep.
Dula Peep.
Dula Peep.
That is the best meme ever. Okay, Lizzo.
Lizzo? Okay. Hung Up by Madonna or Vogue by Madonna?
I would say Vogue.
Vogue? Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, this one's hard for me because both are my favorites, so I'm actually curious for you. Rain on Me, Gaga and Ariana Grande, or Born This Way, Gaga?
I think that I would do Rain on Me, just because I feel like I can dance to that one better.
Yeah, it's a sick dance break. I love it.
Yeah.
Faith, George Michael, or Freedom, George Michael?
For drag, it would be Faith, but I definitely prefer Freedom. Also, because I listened to that song when I was like 5, because my mom would play it. So,
cute.
I love that one more deeply. But anyway,
it's okay.
Faith for drag.
And last one, because running out of time: Supermodel, RuPaul, or I Will Survive, Gloria Gaynor?
I Will Survive.
Same.
Sorry,
actually.
RuPaul.
Yeah, no, I mean, we thank you, but truth.
Yeah.
So with that being said, thank you so much, Daisy, for joining us today. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank our amazing executive team at QQAC, Michael Onesi, Ben Seawald, and of course, everyone for watching the video and supporting QQAC. Hello, folks. Sorry about that as the video cut off towards the end, but I forgot to say a special thank you to, of course, Queens Alumni for inviting QQAC to take over their social media accounts in celebration of Pride. Please don't forget to follow QQAC, Queens Alumni, and Daisy Frazier Boychuk. But specifically, don't forget to follow and support Daisy's drag persona, Toledo Tendergroin. I wish you all a very happy and safe Pride, and on behalf of QQAC, we look forward to bringing more content to you folks soon. Bye!